Why, of all the things we could discuss, now why would you like to talk about milestone birthdays with me?
Well, actually, you planted the seed in my head because lots of people either really look forward to or they dread their milestone birthdays. We're talking the big zeros.
I never imagined when I was younger that my life would actually be expanding in my 50s.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. And I think that's what I was trying to say, that there's, the world opens up and there's possibilities, and you think, fantastic, because we're less encumbered by our other roles as, mothers, and we have a little bit more energy. I certainly feel that, the kind of reproductive side we've parked that, and now our energy is freed up to do whatever we want.
Hello and welcome to Own Your Health with me, Katie Brindle. And today, friend of the show, this is her debut on the show though, but I know I'm psychically channeling already Victoria's coming back, the great and the marvellous and a dear friend, Victoria Woodhall, who is on the show with us today. Before we get started though, please do rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and follow on Spotify because it helps us reach more of you. And if you're on TikTok, Instagram or YouTube, then please leave your questions and your comments. But in today's episode, Victoria's debut, I'm very excited about this because after all of the millions of things that we can discuss, and there are so many things, in fact, James keeps stopping us, goes, stop, stop, stop. You save it for the recording. We're going to talk today about milestone birthdays. Right, that was it. Welcome back. So, Victoria, thank you for making your debut on the show this afternoon.
So excited.
I know, it's so exciting.
We talk such a lot, don't we? And it's nice to talk in this setting.
It is. Now, the thing is, we could talk about so many things, and indeed we do. We've worked together now for many years. Now, let's talk first of all, though, why, of all the things we could discuss, which could be hair loss, skincare, burnout, motherhood, husbands. I mean, it goes on. And skincare was right up there, I have to say, because Victoria's looking really good right now, I have to say. But we'll park that for a minute. We want to talk about milestone birthdays. Now, why would you like to talk about milestone birthdays with me?
Well, actually, you planted the seed in my head because lots of people either really look forward to or they dread their milestone birthdays. We're talking the big zeros, things that people make a fuss of them about or have high expectations or social expectations as to what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to feel when you hit, say, 40, 50, 60 and the kind of fives in between. And also there are lots of personal feelings as well about how you feel about getting into the next decade, what you feel you should have accomplished by then, or and maybe feeling a bit of a disconnect as to, what the external expectations are and how you actually feel. I know when I came up to my 50th birthday, I sort of knew I had to celebrate it, but then I kind of thought, who am I at 50? What statement am I going to make when I get there? And that was quite a pressure.
So what did you do for your 50th?
I had a dinner of close girlfriends. I think there were about 20 of us, and a lovely friend put up her house because, I don't even have room to have 20 girlfriends in my house. She volunteered her house, and everybody brought something, and it was really lovely. And I stood up at the table and just thanked everyone for being there and told an anecdote about how we'd met because, you bring disparate people together and they don't know how you know them and things, and they some of them know each other. And it was just really nice for me to share how I'd met them all and how they'd impacted my life. And I think it was really lovely in the end, although I was slightly dreading it. But you also have to remember, I think, that your friends want to celebrate you.
Yeah.
So to give them that opportunity.
Yeah, but that can become a bit overwhelming as well. Let's just, before we go into this kind of birthday alternative, which we're going to direct to in a minute, because we have a solution for everyone out there. I just want to circle back on something that you said, which is about the expectation of where you should be. Because this is a real problem, I think, in the 21st century, that because of social media, although we love it, there is a very heightened expectation of we should be the most beautiful, the most glamorous, the most successful. Every single aspect of our lives needs to be sort of tickety-boo, because guaranteed there are hundreds of thousands of people out there portraying the fact that they are indeed living the best possible life in that department, and we are absorbing all of it. So just with that in mind then, Victoria, what's your sort of impression of where you would be yourself in your 50s or versus you're 50 at your birthday party giving a speech? What did you think was going to happen next? Because you've gone bonkers in your 50s.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I suppose when I got to 50, I thought, well, when 20 years before, you feel like by 50, you ought to know what life's about. And the older you get, the more you realise that the more you don't know, but the more you become comfortable with not knowing. And that can be quite exciting, because if you knew everything, life would be really boring, wouldn't it? And I think there's a real sense of discovery in your 50s, or certainly I felt that, you know, I embrace social media with your encouragement. You know, we all learn to edit our own videos now.
Can I just point out, Victoria's social media has now completely passed mine.
Only just.
No way. Honestly, she is like la reine of the social media platform. But anyway, yes.
Yeah, but we've evolved as technology and as society has evolved, and we feel like we're kind of right up there. You know, we're right in the middle of things, and you know, we're not on the fringes. You know, being surpassed by, you know, Gen Z.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing to say before, because there's this agenda we're going to go back onto in a second about the 49th birthday. So just stay with us, guys, before we go there. Is that I think one of the key things that I've observed, as now I'm almost 52 when we're recording this, so you're a tiny bit older than me, is that I never imagined when I was younger that my life would actually be expanding in my 50s.
I think that's a really good way of putting it. And I think that's what I was trying to say, that there's, you know, the world opens up and there's possibilities, and you think, fantastic, because we're less encumbered by our other roles as, you know, mothers, and we have a little bit more energy. I certainly feel that, you know, the kind of reproductive side we've parked that, and now our energy is freed up to do whatever we want.
Well, and possibly, depending on how old your children are. Now, you're a tiny bit older than me, therefore your children are a tiny bit older than mine. And I've always said this when we speak, I'm like, because you've got a cat that's got...
My diabetic cat, who's currently having a hypo. I was just texting my daughter, because he's wearing a glucose monitor, so he's the most high maintenance in the family.
So every single time Victoria and I meet for whatever purpose, there's always, I'm really sorry, I've just got to keep my phone on because there's some crisis with your poor pussycat. I mean, honestly, but I have to have my phone on because there's always a crisis with one of my children. Yeah. So we're kind of at that life stage. But what I have noticed is that because both of us are out of the small children bit, which you know, because normally by the time you're in your 50s, there's the odd exception, but most women are kind of coming out of that, is that you do suddenly start to get just a tiny bit more time, whether you're working or a stay-at-home mum or whatever it is. Just the minute there's a breather, they go back into school and it's like, oh my God, I've just got like headspace. And I've noticed that exponentially in my 50s, that the older, or the less, should I say, of a responsibility I have to kind of maintain as the central sort of pivotal caregiver in our family, the more I have to expand into myself. And I think, to go back into the expectation question that we're answering at the moment, of kind of where was I expected to be at 50? I wasn't where I wanted to be at 50. I wasn't. But equally, life has nonetheless expanded itself in a really lovely way, so that I've now dropped the expectations.
Do you still want to be where you thought you would be at 50?
Oh, that's such a good question. And if we were speaking Spanish, there'd be so much subjunctive tense and it'd be marvellous. Right. Yes and no. So I think the thing is that I had a bit of I think what's happened is, and we're going to get on to the key message here, okay? So I'm going to fold it in, is that what Victoria and I have been talking about recently is the actual age that we should be thinking about is 49.
For a milestone birthday.
For a milestone birthday, it's actually 49, not 50. 50 is the patriarchal narrative, which works in movements of 10. But actually female energy, which is what because we are two women talking about female energy frequency here, works in a 7-year cycle. Doesn't work in a 10-year cycle. So I didn't realise this until I don't know, about 15 years ago. So I was never ready for any birthday. I was completely confused at every single birthday along the way. I was always a bit of a kerfuffle because sweet 16 didn't make sense to me. 14 did, 16 didn't, 21 did. But then thereafter, no birthday made sense. And I was always kind of like wibbly wobbling my way through all these.
Funny, because 21 is a multiple of 7.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, it is. Yes. It's 3 times 7. Yeah. Yes, it is. No. Yes. Oh my God, that's so embarrassing.
No, 3 7
yes,
21.
Oh my God.
I just want.
And the rest is mathematics. Please don't listen to me just talking. Okay, what's my 7 times table? Right. Anyway, yes. So that one worked, but the other ones did not. And so what then happened was, once I realised that actually the 49th birthday is the one to be thinking about, and then the one after that, which is of course 56.
which is the one I've just had.
Which is the one you've just had. So therefore, suddenly what happens is you're working in a slightly different time frame. And then these expectations of where I should be at 50 becomes part of that kind of patriarchal narrative, is what have I achieved? What is this time frame? Whereas when you go into the divine feminine, which is working with the 7-year cycle of life, which is the feminine energy frequency working through the feminine yin organism of a female body, suddenly starts to be a lot softer. So at 49, first of all, I could be completely under the radar, because no one ever asks you at 49 what are you doing? Yeah, what are you doing for your 49th? Nothing. Yeah. Like, I don't know, watching telly and having an early night, which is probably what I was doing. But no one asks, no one cares. And you go right under the radar. And if you haven't yet achieved whatever it is that you were supposed to have done by 50, and I was supposed to kind of be like this and have achieved that and done this and blah, 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 is that's no longer the case, because I've got another 7 years to renew it.
I think that makes a lot of sense to us, because we are cyclical beings. We're used to being on a monthly cycle or whatever. And to have this cycle of renewal every 7 years sort of makes sense. You've heard that kind of every cell in your body is supposed to change over the course of 7 years. So you're not the person you were 7 years ago.
And what that allowed me to do was, at the age of 49, to say, well, whatever I have or haven't achieved at this exact pivotal moment in my life, or coming into the 50th year, is going to fold into, as fertilizer, holding the energy frequency into the next 7 years, which I can grow into. And I don't have to reach these landmarks, a bit like Big Ben striking, and it's like, bang, you've got to do it. It's like, I've got 7 years to allow this to unfold. So when I then did hit the 50th, I removed the expectation, thanks to Bridget Moss, to say, okay, I'm just not ready to have this big birthday quite yet. I'm not ready for it. And in the end, it evolved all by itself, and actually it just happened, and then it was fine. But it actually wouldn't have bothered me if that hadn't have unfolded. If Madonna happened not to have played and I didn't happen to have got that box, it would have just move forwards, because by which point everyone stopped asking, and then it doesn't matter. And then I allowed myself to say, I'm going to give myself the next 7 years to have this landmark birthday as and when I feel like I'm in the mood and I feel like I'm ready to do it. Now, it happened to be at the end of my 50th year. That's when it happened to pop up. Had it not have done, I would have allowed myself all the way through this next 7-year cycle to have just sort of felt, I'm now ready to kind of, I'm in this phase, rather than a date, rather than it's my birthday this day, I have to celebrate on this moment. It gives you a whole phase of expression to say, well, I'm not ready right now, but I might be ready in a couple of years' time, and I might be ready to landmark it then, or maybe not, by which point the expectations disappeared.
And those 7 years from 49 to 56, many women are in the throes of menopausal symptoms, and they're kind of, our primary concern is, I mean, they may have gone through that in the 7 years previous if they've had a slightly earlier menopause, but you're in the throes of managing your symptoms with Chinese medicine, of course,
and yoga, of course,
and getting them under control. So you can kind of do that, go about your business. In that might be what's happening in that 7-year cycle. So when you're in 56, you might have slightly come out of it a little bit, and you can celebrate the 56th. Or, as you said, because when we first talked about this, I said, well, I didn't mark my 49th or my 56th, am I too late? But you said, no, so you can, start now, have your 49th birthday. If you're 60, have it now, and do what you like. And you can go in these kind of 7-year cycles, but actually it's up to us what we decide is a landmark birthday, what we feel like.
And there is the point. It's up to us to decide. So all of a sudden then you've got your power. Because I think the thing that I felt when people kept asking me was this sense of powerlessness, because it was a very negative narrative, which is, I haven't achieved, I'm not where I'm supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, it ends in a 0. That's the ultimate negative, isn't it?
Yes, isn't it?
No, it's not a negative. It's a 0.
It's a 0, but nonetheless, it feels negative. But the point is that it does give you that sense of negativity and powerlessness, because it's like, by the way, if you have hit a landmark birthday and everything's tickety-boo and you're like, no, I'm going out with a bang, thank you very much. By all means, we're not saying don't do that. We're just saying that there's a vast amount of people that don't feel that, and that actually really what the point is that there's a sort of phasing that you can own to take control of, to go, actually, I'm not doing anything for my 50th because I went hell for leather at my 48th or my 49th, or actually I'm going to give myself a couple of years and I'm going for it on my 52nd.
Yeah. Or you could have a me birthday on your 49th, which is actually what you did, because you told me about it, and then you can have a everyone else's birthday, or kind of a sort of more kind of outward looking birthday at 50 or whatever the zero is that you're coming up to, because you might want to celebrate with friends who have expectations around that, or want to celebrate your that you've made it this far, which is an achievement. But I remember you told me that you went to a spa with your daughter and a close friend, and actually how Chinese medicine kind of sort of fitted into that, because it's about the kidneys.
Yes, and it was very much a kind of yin process. So rather than that, the yang is da-da, balloons and streamers and parties and surprise and da-da-da-da-da, an outward expression, which often, if we're looking at 49, 50 as the sort of the age mark, the benchmark that we're thinking about here, is often not what you're in the mood to do. You might feel too tired. You might be bang slap in the middle of symptoms where you're just thinking, I don't really feel like I look my best. I don't feel my best. I don't want to outwardly express myself, because at that exact moment, if we're experiencing menopausal symptoms, you often want to nurture your yin. So you want to be going inwards, and obviously the ultimate yin in the body is the water element, which is the kidneys, and the kidneys are indeed responsible for the 7-year cycle of life and for the movement of the female body from the maiden, which is kind of what kicks in at about 14, to the mother, which kicks in at about 21, and then ultimately goes into the matriarch, which is at 49. And those are the landmark birthdays, not sweet 16. It's sweet 14 and sweet 21, which does get recognised, and then 49. And that then takes us into kind of where we went with this topic about the kind of concept of 49, because we've been talking a little bit about menopausal symptoms and the menopause, because when we're dealing with the 50th, 45th, 50, 55 birthdays, these have a habit of colliding with the menopause. And something that both of us are very aware of is the menopause has got a lot of negative narrative around it. And one of the things that we talked about when we were discussing this was how it's important to honour the difficult symptoms that many women go through, and we're not negating them at all. We're going to address them in a second, but to actually perhaps look at the positive aspects of what can happen. So Victoria, what's your sort of feeling on that?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, as you said, get your symptoms under control first, because that's going to clear the path for you to do whatever you want to do in this phase of life. And actually, one of my kind of sort of things I always have in my head is that you're stronger than you think. Because you can, I mean, certainly in terms of yoga, you can put on muscle. You can learn poses in your 50s that you would normally attribute to a 20-year-old. I mean, I can now get my leg behind my head. I'm not going to win any prizes. There are no kind of yoga Olympics, I don't think.
That's what I call it. It's not the Qigong Olympics, ladies.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah, I can get my leg behind my head, and I never thought I could do that. Why bother getting your leg behind your head, you might think. But it's about progressively finding more space and more strength in your body. And when you walk around with a body that it feels spacious and strong, and you're in control of it and you're connected, because there's some quite intense sensations involved in getting your leg behind your head. And you have to be really present and mindful with your breath while you're doing it, because otherwise you'll injure yourself. And it's a very slow, millimetre by millimetre. It took me years of practice to get there. But the sense of that you're on a journey that's going onwards and upwards all the time.
As opposed to closing down.
Yeah, expansion. You're expanding yourself from the inside, because in order to get your leg behind your head, for example, could be any other pose that previously has been inaccessible to you. You've created space. You've unlocked tension that you've acquired throughout your life from your habits or whatever. And you are kind of chipping away at, so your body, you're getting to your body in its natural state and reaching its full potential, because you do have, unless you've had an injury or surgery or whatever, you do have a fuller range of motion. But because of our habits, we're probably just using the kind of forward and backward plane because we walk. We don't even have to twist anymore. Like when you're reversing your car, most cars have like a screen, and you can just look at the screen in front of you to tell you how you're reversing. You don't have to even turn. You've got a swivel chair. The chair swivels for you. You don't have to twist. So your spine is never really being put through its range of motion. So it's just connecting to yourself, because you're using your body in the way that it is designed to be moved, or can be moved.
I think this is such a key thing to start to now focus on. So we'll pivot back to menopausal symptoms afterwards, because we're not negating them, and we've got some pretty good techniques. And by the way, anyone suffering from symptoms at the moment, please have a look at the free menopause fact sheet on my website, because and there's a masterclass as well, and I'm really proud of that fact sheet, and it's free. So please have a look at it, because I cover all of the symptoms there. But really the narrative that Victoria and I want to get onto is, once we've addressed those symptoms, because you can, is that suddenly, because the narrative at the moment is very much sort of hit 50, here's a pile of expectations as to what you should do at that moment in time. And then all the birthday cards are, it's downhill all the way, and 50 is a new 40, and it's like you're over the hill, and, it's as you say, it's a slow, steady decline. But actually the optimistic narrative, or what I would call the divine dialogue, which is a much more optimistic and enlightened viewpoint of this moment in our life, and what then ensues off the back of it, is that you're in a state of expansion, not contraction, and that it's not a decline at all. Often we are lucky to have perhaps a little bit more free time, even if it's only tiny fractions of free, like breaths of free time. Like, I know I have slightly more headspace than I had in my 40s, because my kids are that tiny bit older. So with that comes an expanding divine dialogue of, actually, I can start to focus more about my own journey. I'm no longer 100% focused on all the people around me in my family unit, and in your case as well, kind of keeping everything ticking over as well, because you were doing it all, weren't you? You were working and and all of it, and it gives you the opportunity to start thinking about your own spiritual evolution, whether that's manifesting itself through your actual physical state, and whether you can start opening the body up by practicing poses that will open, create space, and to create an expansion. But also from a mental perspective, whether we can start now considering our matriarch, which is when we actually look at the function of the 49th birthday, which goes in a very beautiful yin way right under the radar, which is very yin because it's dark. It's the occult. It's the darkness that no one even pays attention to, from which comes what becomes visible. Okay, the visible comes out of the invisible, the yin visible, as I like to call it. I know, little in joke for the Chinese doctors there. And everyone's laughing, oh, for God's sake. Let me have a laugh. I'm obviously turning into my, people say they turn into their moms. Yeah. I turn into my dad. My dad's got a wicked sense of humour, and it's like, oh, grandpa's jokes. So I'm starting to do the same thing as I'm getting older. Anyway, the point is that the yin visible is that under the radar birthday at 49 that no one's paying attention to, where you can start defining the next 7 years. And actually, in the sequence of the female energy, it is the matriarch birthday. So the maiden is 14, the mother is 21, and the matriarch is 49. So bang, in you go with this thing that no one even realised was a thing. And the exciting news to anyone out there who is either heading towards 49 or has passed 49 is that you are about to enter the matriarch zone. And this is exciting stuff. We're both in it, and our lives are both evolving into it. Yeah. Perhaps not necessarily in the direction we perhaps even, you said that you hadn't really thought about what it was going to evolve anyway, possibly not until I came along and then told you.
Yes, exactly, until I had my Bar Z, which was life-changing. I mean, literally.
I know, I'm so proud of that. I'm really good at telling everyone what to do. And then I had all these great plans, and then I just got a bit of burnout. I thought, you know what, I can't be bothered. I'm just going to enjoy myself. And to be honest, I never thought, guys, actually, that I'd do a podcast. That was not on my great list of when I had turned 50. And yet here I am going, I love this podcast. I love Own Your Health. It's the best bit of my week. Honestly, don't tell Mr. Brindle that. He thinks dinner with him is. But anyway, he won't be listening. It's okay. Anyway, he listens to more than enough of my voice to actually actively. He's too busy listening to the rest is politics. He loves that one. I digress. So the point is that you enter the matriarch zone. And the matriarch zone is actually when the female energy really goes into full power. So shall we talk a bit about the matriarch zone?
Yeah, because you were the first person I heard to calling this age the second spring. And that has this, this feeling of blossoming, growing, expanding. And I really feel that's a great term for it. But also you've taught me that in Chinese medicine, this is a time where women are really valued for all the experience and wisdom that we've accrued. And it's a time when we can share that with, as many people as possible, and people who are younger than us. So we've got a lot to offer and a lot to say.
Well, it's really interesting because you see the world has come in this amazing circle because, of course, time and energy does indeed move in circles. So way back when, many centuries ago, not long after the Bible began. It's karaoke Katie day today, so sorry, I just have to do like this few impromptu bursts into song here. But anyway, way back when we lived as tribes, as you say, rightly so, that the female energy, if you'd got to 49 plus, which was nothing shy of a miracle because you'd have witnessed wars and famines and childbirth, and you'd just know a thing or two. You became a very, very valuable member of your tribe and community. Now, we've kind of exited the tribal zone. I mean, I know there are some, but, basically the kind of the rule of the patriarch has kind of taken over, and society's organised itself in a different ways. And that amazing matriarchal wisdom has been kind of cast aside as the ultimate sort of patriarchal two fingers, which is, old wives' tales. So that the female identity was very much cherished as the virtuous maiden. So that's virginity. That's all very exciting. Motherhood, great, because you're going to be the vessel for their children. That's great too. Matriarch, no, we don't like that because you're far too powerful with this wisdom. So we're either going to kill you off in the witch hunt or just basically not give you any kind of support whilst you're giving birth. So you'll die off in that process. But nowadays, the point is it has come full circle, and the rise of the wise matriarch is no longer, that's just old wives' tales. It's actually, no, we do know a thing or two. And of course, tribes have reformed virtually. E.g. the Trini tribe, for example, to name but one, but that's a very famous one and someone we both really respect. So there is an example of people have reformed themselves as virtual
in communities
tribes.
with with
people
people like
people.
you
And Trini and there's thousands and thousands of them out there, but who are out there leading the tribes, not in a kind of, well, I'm a tribes leader kind of way, but just going, right, well, I like Chinese medicine. No, right. So if you want to come to Katie Brindle, you're going to learn all sorts of things about self-care and all sorts of things about Chinese medicine and Qigong. If you go off to the Victoria Woodhall tribe, there's a huge crossover, but you're all about self-care and wisdom and yoga.
Yeah.
So we've got a nice little concentric circle between us. And if you go over to the Trini tribe and off we all go. So the point is that tribes have reformed with many matriarchs at the top of the funnel. And also what's lovely is that the algorithm from which all these virtual tribes have sprung actually was, of course, Ada Lovelace, who was indeed a female, literally a couple of centuries ago, who came up with the algorithm in the first place. So it's like the reassertion of the female wise elder has just formulated itself out of this amazing revolution of information that we have literally lived through during the course of our sort of older lives in the 21st century.
I think you should start a greetings card company where we can buy greetings cards that celebrate our older birthdays rather than talking about, happy birthday, here's another chin hair, or that kind of thing.
That's a really good idea. So we should do that. I'm just literally looking at myself going, and who is going to implement that? Don't know. But it's a really good idea. Can you imagine every single birthday we could give you? Well, actually, that's kind of where journals come from, isn't it? So this is where journaling is so useful because it will give you like an inspirational quote at the headline inspiration.
Yes, exactly.
But then again, that creates an expectation again. But anyway, I digress. The point is that the matriarch frequency is so powerful because it expands and it puts you in your ultimate power, which is you're a wise elder. So how does it feel? Because you're slightly older than me. You're like my big sister. So what does it feel like being a wise elder, Victoria?
I feel like there's so much to do and to talk about and to get involved with that it's really exciting. And and what's lovely about being on social media and having all these virtual communities is that people can ask you questions and you can answer kind of really quickly. Or if I don't, as a journalist, if I don't know the answer, I can quickly get in touch with someone who does. Like today, I just came from teaching my Friday lunchtime yoga class, and we were doing a class where I brought in affirmations, and I was able to bring in the science from Dr. Tara Swart, who's a neuroscientist who I'd interviewed about how to use affirmations in a way that speaks to your brain on a kind of neuroscientific level. And very quickly, that information had gone from a Zoom with Tara Swart and me to my community who I teach, and then I'll do an Instagram reel and some posts sharing affirmation science, and then we'll all be doing them. It can spread so quickly.
It does. It spreads up. Well, this is the positive aspect of social media. We're all fully aware of the negative sides of it, but when you use it correctly for educational purposes, it is incredible for the imparting of female wisdom and wise elder wisdom and masculine wisdom. I'm not just being sort of gender here, but it is phenomenal. And I mean, look at us, because you've now just imparted that into this podcast, and then out it's going to go again, because we cross over. And funnily enough, when Victoria came in and James kept saying, "Stop talking, Katie, save it for the podcast," I was like, because funnily enough, I go to you. I call you my go-to guru.
Oh.
Now I know no one else calls you that, but I call you that because you are. Whenever I don't know something, which is loads, or my daughters go, "Mummy, da 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 da," I go, "Oh, I don't know, let me ask Victoria." So before I bother you, I will always go to your Instagram feed and I just have a quick look to see what's Victoria done about hair dryers, skin treatments, hair loss. I don't know. I mean, you name it, you cover it, because you are just such a guru on absolutely everything. And only this morning have I just bought. And so
I influenced you.
You've influenced me. No one's paying you for this, which is a shame. It's not fair. But you've come in with this gorgeous hair, and I'm going, "Oh my God, I've just bought that thing off, that GHD."
Yeah, the blow dry.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But this is the absolute range of incredible wisdom that Victoria brings to the table, which I have no idea about, because sort of I'm just too busy discussing I'm so focused on what I do. But it's so useful. So on that note, the other thing about reaching the 49th birthday plus, which is really, and avoiding the whole negative narrative around these landmark birthdays, and embracing the fact that the aging process is indeed a good thing. Let's talk about visual aging, because it's very much a part of what both of us do. In fact, we actually met through you being one of the first people that came to me presenting about gua sha before anyone knew what it was. I remember meeting you. I remember your face. I remember you so well. And we met in the beauty arena. And actually, I was just saying before we started how so you're 56 and your skin, I keep staring at it every time. I'm like, "Oh my God, your skin. So what are you doing to your skin?" And I was in Italy last week with my son and my best friend and her son. And I didn't even know how I got into conversation with the waiter, but I did, because I do. And literally he said something. And I went, no. I said, "Because I'm 52. And he practically dropped my plate of pasta because he just kind of had to triple take, and he just sort of looked at me and he went, "That's literally where," he went, "Ma non è possibile." And I'm like, "No, I am." And so this is my son. And often I was then away with my husband, quite privileged here, but with my husband and my eldest daughter. And you could see people kind of going, "How's this all fit together?" And I'm not sort of sitting here pretending that I've got some secret. There's no secret.
No.
The point is, you can look really good these days in your 50s with a few really easy things. A lot of it's at home.
Yes, and we sort of we feel entitled to do that when we don't feel like we should look what would have been considered our age, say 10 years ago.
And nor do you have to spend a lot of money on it either if you know what you're doing.
No,
Again, why I love your feed so much, because Victoria has got a wealth of this is a good gadget, this is the one to buy. What are your things? Because you do look absolutely amazing. So come on, hair, nails, face, skin.
Hair. I mean, I have, like many women, I've got slightly thinning hair at the temples. My mother and my grandmother had the same thing. So there's a kind of genetic element, and it can be kick-started by fluctuating hormones. So if you've got a slight genetic tendency, it can sort of come out in sort of slight pattern thinning. But I do a lot to try and keep my hair in my head, and there's loads that you can do. Yeah, I cover hair loss a lot because it can be so distressing for women, because you think you're on the slow slide to baldness, don't you? You just think, I remember my mum always combing her hair over the wash basin and then practically counting the hairs, and she really used to get upset by it. But like you've got the scalp comb. That is brilliant. Anything you can do to stimulate your scalp, because you want to increase the blood flow to really nourish the follicles. It's, it's...
But your hair, so just to say that Victoria covers hair loss a lot, and it's another thing we bonded over, because I also have, believe it or not, very, very, very fine hair genetically. I've just got loads of extensions in mine, and I'm not ashamed to admit it, because I love having thick hair. I just love it.
Yeah, it's lovely.
It's because
like
I was
mermaid today.
Well, it's because I was burnt at the stake as a witch in a past life, and I ain't letting go of it. So there we go. But I've embraced it in a different way. But your hair looks like it's thickened with age.
It has.
It has. With all this stuff.
It's. I went to see both a trichologist and a hair doctor yesterday, you can have all sorts of things now, like scalp scans, and it's if you can sort of save up for a visit to a trichologist, it might save you money on buying the wrong products or treating your scalp in a way that, you know, isn't hair friendly.
Yeah.
So if you're on HRT, there are some HRTs that are hair friendly and some that aren't. So, and I think they've probably got the list on their website. I went to Philip Kingsley. So, you know, just looking at whether you can make a switch there, whether that's affecting your hair, but also things like washing your hair properly. You know, they did a scalp examination, and I had some flaky bits, and she said, well, I can tell you're not really, you know, you're missing out this bit at the back. And if your hair or your scalp has got build up, sort of dead skin cells, it can get inflamed, and then inflammation can impact on your ability to grow hair. And things like hair masks, things like protein pre-washes. There are a couple that I really like.
You like the elasticizer,
I like
don't
elasticizer.
You? She says like a total.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was literally buying that this morning off your.
Yeah, and you can look around and get some really good deals on that. I do shop around. It's quite pricey, but get the big, if you can, get the massive refill, because it's the 1 litre pack will last you forever. I bet you get it on QVC. On QVC,
guarantee. Yeah,
it's something like 70 quid on QVC, and then if you did the maths and bought that as little pots, it would be like 300 quid or something.
Yeah.
Especially so if you've got family members to share it with or friends, you can just decant it into pots.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're just really looking after the condition of your hair. As we age, our scalp gets dry, like everything else gets dry. So switching up your shampoo to be more moisturising and treating your scalp like skin, maybe putting a scalp serum on it. You can get some really good peptide serums, like The Ordinary does one. Peptides really help with hair growth and hair stimulation.
And you've got that gorgeous new blow drying thing, which I've also bought because I was literally like, you probably noticed if you go to your Instagram, you see that I've been all over your site this morning because I had 5 minutes. And if I missed anything that Victoria's been talking about, but that's brilliant. That's the GHD thing, which your hair's looking gorgeous with that.
Well, you know, I try not to create too much stress on my hair because I do minimal colouring and minimal styling because I just don't want to pull it or break it or heat treat it. So what I like about that particular one is it only heats up to 120 degrees, whereas other straighteners, you know, classic straighteners go to 185, and you're kind of in, I mean, sort of over 185, you're kind of in hair damage territory, especially if you're like pulling and straightening.
And if your hair's fine, which it often is.
Yeah, and I struggle with volume, and especially at the front where it's a bit thin, and also I really can't be asked to learn the art of, you know, the salon blow dry. I just want to kind of do this because I'm usually in a hurry. You know, I've got 5 minutes to get to work.
My daughter, who in fairness, you know, she's busy herself, but, you know, she does have the time to sort of part and put it up and do this and do that. And I'm looking at it going, well, I want my hair to look like that, but
I've only got 5 minutes.
I've only got 5 minutes. So and I'm on camera.
Yes.
And I should care. I mean, I care now, obviously, because this is the only... But honestly, anybody watching this, if you go onto my stories, I look like a bag woman. I mean, it's like literally, I like the before and this is the after. I look like the before, and it's not good. But you know what? It's authentic, because I just haven't got time to fiddle. But this thing looked good.
Yeah, no, it is good. And I've come on a sweaty tube, travelled an hour to get here, and I think my hair's, I haven't looked, but I think it's still holding together. And this is me, you know, unskilled me, just kind of...
So this is 50-year-old or 49 plus hair tips, which is basically that GHD thing gets a thumbs up from you, and it's about to get a thumb. Basically, whatever Victoria says, I agree with. It's like if we were at school, I'd be copying. What did you say for question 3? So I would agree, and then I go and own it over here with the Chinese medicine. Now, skin, because your skin has also reversed since I first met you. Your skin's looking amazing, and so is mine. Now, I credit mine to salmon sperm, which we've discussed in another episode.
Polynucleotides. That's exactly what I say too.
It's amazing.
And I've had 2 treatments, but I had my last one last week. But I got my before and after from the first one, and there's a really noticeable difference. I had it around the eyes, and the eyes are often the first to show the signs of. Sort of, you know, the skin is very thin there, so it can get compromised quite quickly, and because it's thin, it shows all the blood vessels underneath, so you look like you've got dark circles, and then the fat pads can sink down, so you get the eye bags as well, and then lymph gets more sluggish, so you get all of, you know, there's lots of issues around the eyes, and of course we gravitate towards the eyes straight away to make an impression, form an impression of people. So this treatment around the eyes is really... It's slightly uncomfortable. Did you find it uncomfortable?
I would align it to basically having your face stung by bees about 36 times.
Did you have lots of little needles?
Yes.
Yes, I had cannula. So the cannula is one insertion. So a cannula is like It's not a needle. I mean, you've probably had a...
Yeah, I've had that as well.
If people have had operations, you have a cannula in your arm, and then that's how they put in all the fluids and medicine and things. Yeah, so the cannula is one insertion point, and then they glide it underneath the skin. It just looks a bit
gross.
icky.
Yeah, don't look.
Yeah.
But then again, I had
you wouldn't. Yeah, your eyes are closed.
I had an emergency C-section with both kids, and I just said, "Don't show me anything." just like literally, I just went in with my eyes closed, going, "I don't want to start looking at what they're doing." So.
Yeah, but it's a regenerative medicine. So all these developments in skincare and aesthetics, the really popular ones are about switching our cells on and getting them to act like they did, say, 10 years ago. So you still look like yourself, but you're just
fresh.
Yes, exactly. So you're looking appropriate, just a little bit fresher, like you've had a holiday.
Yeah, and it's not like the previous Botox debate, like, oh, have you had Botox? No, I haven't. Yes, you have, I can tell. It's not about that. These new techniques coming through now are, as you've said, they're all about rejuvenation, which is very much connected to kind of, this is where the anti-aging or preventative health, this whole movement, which is, again, this exciting thing about being sort of 49 plus at this moment in time, because all this stuff's literally coming into the market. It's getting cheaper. It was expensive. It's kind of A-list celebrities only. But as these things become mainstream, they become more and more doable, and then these things appear in more and more places, and then it becomes something which actually becomes plausible, and it's not bad for you. It's not like saying sticking Botox right between your brow, which I'm not getting involved as to whether that's good or bad. It's a matter of opinion, but the point is that there are new things coming onto the market which are completely natural, albeit a little bit unpleasant, but they do give you really lovely effects, and they give you the feeling that you can look fresh. It's confidence.
Yeah.
It is confidence.
Yeah, exactly. Because we're still bombarded with this ageist narrative, aren't we? So, trying to put ourselves out there.
And feeling confident. Yeah. The other thing that I absolutely love, aside from gua sha, obviously, which I talk about a lot because that's such a brilliant technique, and the face brush, which I also love because it's so good first thing, is the LED mask, which I also learned from you, because I'm all about these tools, which we don't need to go into too much because I've talked about them otherwise, but you, again, was a great influence on me with the LED.
So with LED, as you know, you have to use it regularly, so you have to use it 3 times a week, so there's no point in buying one if you think you can't be bothered to use it.
And it's so easy.
Yeah, it is easy, and you can watch TV in it, and I have to say, I do love them, but I'm not very good at sitting still for 20 minutes, the time it takes to put the mask on.
But you do yoga with yours on. I've seen you on your Instagram.
I have, yeah. But I don't have a mask. I have this kind of thing that's like it's like a panel, and you lie underneath it. Yeah, and I nap underneath it because it's actually really soothing and calming. So red light not only stimulates collagen, but it's also kind of quite soothing for inflammation, and it really sends me to sleep. So I nap. I listen to a podcast, and I nap, which is what you've taught me to do between 3 and 5.
Oh, so that's the best thing to do. I've found that actually using the red light, because I've got the mask, which actually you gave me. Actually, thank you so much. But I've invested, thanks to you, in the dome thing.
Yes.
Because you said that was the best one.
Yeah,
so
it
I
is,
got that
and
one.
it's the one that doctors I know recommend for home.
Yeah.
It's called, what's it called? Oh, gosh.
It's not from the Light Salon, is it? No, it's not. It's somewhere else.
From,
we'll put it in the comments below, just where that one's from. That's quite expensive, that one.
Dermalux Flex.
Yes.
Yeah, but you can usually buy it on, they usually have payment plans.
Yeah. But nonetheless, for many people, that's a kind of Christmas present, or if you are hitting a landmark birthday, roll up, everyone, give me one of those. Because actually it works on hair, face. You use it on your shoulder, I use it on mine. But the other thing that I found it's really helped me with was that I had really damaged my eyesight from overuse of being on my phone. Now, why? As a health expert? Well, because I'm running my community. And therefore, this whole thing started with me just kind of talking out there about what I do and people messaging in and me answering the messages. And that would often be done last thing at night, even though I knew that was bad for me. There wasn't any other time in the day. And slowly but surely over a slow period of time, I suddenly noticed, having had perfect eyesight, that when I was reading a book, I know on those rare occasions I was thinking, gosh, my eyesight's not as good as it used to be. And since I've been using the red light religiously, my eyesight's gone back. And also, yes.
Oh,
and
wow.
I've got my phone hygiene really tightly under control. I really, really have, because I thought if I carry on like this, I'm going to destroy myself, and I'm not prepared to do that. It's not okay anymore. So, that's another thing about being post 49 is that you start to kind of own your boundaries a little bit more. Go, well, I can't overgive, because if I overgive, because we were talking, won't be able to see, or I'll just burn out. Because and actually, just on that note, because we've talked about skin, we've talked about hair. Now, just to say to everyone, Victoria obviously is a very treasured guest on this podcast, or you're about to be, because I've said so. But do have a look if you haven't, or if you're not already following Victoria, you must. Okay, you have to, please, because you're just everything. Your content is just second to none, and you are my go-to guru on all the things I don't know. But we were talking earlier about, hang on a minute, I've now forgotten exactly what we were talking about. Burnout, thank you. Sorry, she says. And about, yes, forgetting your words. No, about burnout, because both of us have gone through burnout, and producer James was just saying, well, how do you know if you've got burnout or not? We immediately go, well, okay, there's obviously medical explanations for that, but let's just sort of talk narrative rather than medical, because, you know, medical, go to the doctors about that. But what was burnout for you? Because it's something that you have to be really careful about when you get to 49 plus. You've really got to start thinking about managing how much you give versus how much you give back to yourself.
Yeah, so the couple of times that I've sort of either had it, or once I definitely had it in my, I think I must have been 30, 20, 28, 29, 30, something like that. Goodness knows why, because I didn't have half the stuff to do that I had.
What were we moaning about?
Like, what on earth was I
live for my weekends. It's like, what? I don't know what that is anymore.
I think, I had this kind of, it is kind of quite common among young women, is a certain type of young women, is this perfectionist, push yourself streak. And I just hadn't reined that in. I hadn't put any boundaries in place for myself, because I hadn't thought, I suppose now looking back, I hadn't thought I was worth protecting. Yeah. So now, when you know, having had kids, I know I need to look after myself a bit more, and just getting kind of older and wiser. But again, you know, in my 40s, I kind of teetered on the edge of that as well, because I had a full-time job on a newspaper. My kids were small. I was writing a yoga book, ironically, telling people not to get so stressed.
Getting stressed in the process.
My husband wasn't working. He'd closed his business. And so I was the breadwinner. And I was in a newspaper environment where it was very much bums on seats, you know, presenteeism. You sort of had to pretend you didn't have children. There was no concessions made for childcare or anything like that. Or there was no working from home. And so it was actually writing the book on top of doing everything else, because I was working before work and after work and at weekends. I just had no downtime. And, you know, I think you just learn. And so how did I feel? I kind of got that kind of hot brain feeling. You know, when you feel like your brain is hot. And when I first had burnout, I was just on the floor tired. I couldn't get out of bed. And certainly people who've talked about having, you know, burnout recognised by a doctor, that's also what they feel, is that, you know, you run out of stress hormones to keep you going because you've used them all up, and you know, your cortisol can't get you out of bed anymore because you haven't got enough of it. You've used it all up, and then you have to rebuild yourself.
Yeah, because I had something, I got COVID. I love saying this story. I got COVID off a ski instructor. It was so sexy, and it so wasn't. Anyway, in February, and it was I've had COVID before. I had it in lockdown, in the first lockdown. And honestly, I came out of self-isolating for 10 days, and everyone thought I'd been on holiday, because basically I hadn't had to do anything for 10 days. I looked great. I felt so much better. But this strain was horrendous. And it wasn't burnout per se, but it was all of the symptoms of, because it had absolutely just gone for me. And it was just that absolutely debilitating exhaustion whereby you just can't
do anything.
You just can't. And it's a really important lesson in life, if you've ever been through it, and I know so many people have, to know that actually is a condition. It is something that you need to be careful of. You need to protect your energy at all costs. And I've had to spend the last 6 months really, really rebuilding my priorities, brick by brick. I was forced to look at everything I did and go, right,
do I need that?
Yeah, stuff has to go, because I physically can't absorb all this. And so the boundaries had to go in. They were forced to go in, because it was kind of do or die. And I think the wisdom here to impart is, don't wait for something as extreme as your experience or my experience to come in to go, and now the boundary goes in. It's like, use that 49th birthday or that 56th birthday or the 42nd 22nd birthday, she says, just
Yeah,
desperately
yes,
doing her
it
math
is.
here. Oh, right, okay. Just using those birthdays to go, actually, the older one gets, the more expanded our souls can become, but actually the more disciplined we need to be with the amount of energy that we give out for the day-to-day. Because otherwise it's just there's danger markers kind of like coming in. So I think probably that is enough for today. So Victoria, thank you so much for coming in. I hope you'll come back to discuss all sorts of things
I'd love to.
that we find interesting, which is basically everything. If you have any questions for me or Victoria, because between the two of us we do cover quite a lot, as you can probably tell, do please leave your comments on TikTok, Instagram or YouTube. We now have an email address, everybody, very excited, which is ownyourhealth@katiebrindle.com. So if you have a private question, do feel free to put it there, or just a question you just kind of fancy putting it in there instead. If it is confidential, please just write private or confidential at the top. Otherwise, we are possibly going to share it. And then if you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, do please review us or follow us and share this with your friends. And yes, I think that's me wrapped up for the day. Thank you so much for joining us, Victoria.
Thank you.
And look forward to seeing you all again soon.